Good afternoon. I just wanted to welcome you to my channel, Elijah and Moses, and I wanted to give you an update about King Charles, and this has to do with the King Charles banknotes are entering circulation, and it says new banknotes featuring the portrait of King Charles III have now entered circulation, but it may be some time before they're commonly seen in wallets and purses. The new Bank of England notes will gradually replace those which are damaged or will be issued when the demand increases. The King is only the second monarch to appear on these notes, with Queen Elizabeth II first featuring in 1960. Shoppers can still use current circulation £5, £10, £20, and £50 notes carrying the portrait of the late Queen. The reverse side of current polymer Bank of England banknotes, which in ascending order feature Sir Winston Churchill, Jane Austen, J.M.W. Turner, and Alan Turing, are unchanged. Notes issued in Scotland and Northern Ireland feature other images and not the monarch. By the way, Alan Turing was an amazing code breaker in World War II and really turned the tide of cracking the code of the Nazis. So that's interesting that he's featured on these. The first new banknotes were printed last year, with the long lead in time allowing automated machines that accepted cash to be updated to recognize the new designs. The King's portrait is based on a picture taken in 2013. In April last year, the BBC was given exclusive access to the highly secure site where the notes are being produced. A year on, the King was presented with a full set of the lowest serial numbers, following the tradition of the monarch receiving the first issues of new banknotes. Collectors seek banknotes which come as close to the 00001 serial number as possible. The post office reported collectors visiting branches which had stocks of the notes during the day. There was an early queue outside the Bank of England in London, where an exchange service is in operation until June 11th, with a limit of £300. It is also running a postal service with the same limit until the 30th of June, with an application form required to be completed. Volunteers at the bank said around 200 people visited on Wednesday to exchange their notes. Student Sean Brown, 20, traveled from Hertfordshire to get one of the first notes. Since I was young, I've been collecting coins, so I wanted to be here for this monumental occasion, he said. And while the King is appearing on banknotes, cash may be disappearing from our lives. This is a historic moment, as it's the first time we've changed the sovereign on our notes, said Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey. We know that cash is important for many people, and we are committed to providing banknotes for as long as the public demand them. But a survey for Link, the UK's cash access and ATM network, found that nearly half, 48% of those asked said that they expected a cashless society during their lifetime. However, the same portion said this would be problematic, and 71% of those surveyed said that they still had some level of everyday reliance on cash. Yet figures from Consumer Association, which found that 6,000 bank branches had closed in the last 9 years, leaving many places with none at all and limited access to cash. 50 of them now have banking hubs, shared premises often run by the post office, where customers of any bank can withdraw and deposit cash, and where community workers from different banks visit once a week. One of the more unusual is in the harbor town in Cornwall, a county with rich connections to King Charles. The hub is found behind a cafe and heritage center and underneath a top restaurant where the entrance to a climbing wall used to be. People can now come to take money out, put money in, and they can deposit checks, and we give change for local businesses, said Debbie Young, manager at the hub. People come to pay their bills and top up their gas and electric. With the last bank having closed 18 months ago, the hub is a lifeline, according to Angie Harrison, who manages the coffee shop in front of the hub. Obviously, you can bank your cash right away. You don't have to worry about having cash on the premises, said Mrs. Harrison, a former fishmonger who has lived in Lou all her life. For all the businesses in the town, they need to use it. You know that old saying, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And that was true, too, of cash. And she said people were curious to see the new banknotes featuring the king. Post office branches where the notes will be available first are at Piccadilly Plaza in Manchester, M2, 1BB, Sunderland City, SR1, 1RR, Portsmouth. I won't give all these numbers. Birmingham, City of London, Moorgate, Broadway, Great Massingham, Tetbury, Minchinhampton, Windsor, Houndsditch, Woodstock, and Poundbury. It will be a slow change for our change, but there are still longer-term questions over the future of notes and coins, where the king's image now features. Coins, December 2022, millions of 50-pound coins with the king's image entered circulation. Other new coin designs, such as a bee on the pound coin, were introduced towards the end of 2023. Stamps, March 2023. The first King Charles stamps were issued by Royal Mail as part of a special set. The following month, the new regular first and second class stamps were issued, showing the king without his crown. Passports in July of 2023, British passports in the name of His Majesty rather than Her Majesty were issued. Official portrait, January 2024, public buildings such as town halls and courts were offered an official photo of the monarch taken at Windsor Castle. Tudor crown, February 2024, King Charles's preferred design of crown was introduced in places such as the gov.uk website and official buildings. Banknotes, June 2024, the Bank of England issues the 5, 10, 20, and 50-pound banknotes with the king's portrait based on a picture taken in 2013, and post boxes are only changed when they are damaged or scheduled for extensive repair, meaning there are still examples from Queen Victoria's reign, and this looks likely to be one of the public symbols slower to change. So, when I was talking about, I was revealing that about my dream about the king's mark being the mark of the beast, because the prophet Daniel told us that a beast is a king. So the king's mark is the mark of the beast, and that's his royal cipher. And what you have on his royal cipher is these ornate letters of his, it's got his crown, his title, his name, and his number on it. And so because the king has his image on the money as well, this could play into the not being able to buy and sell unless you have the king's mark, that you're, it's like you're approved of something that's coming, that you must show your allegiance to the king or you won't be able to buy and sell. So it all falls into place, and it's truly the Holy Spirit that revealed that to me, and I was blown away. But just let's have a look at the banknote here. Yeah, I'm just going to kind of zoom up on this specimen of King Charles banknote and point out a few things. You'll see the king is right here, of course, but here is his royal cipher, and it's got his number in there. And then you've got the crown. This is what I saw in my dream. I saw that the crown had the embedded 666 in it, but Okay, so now I'm zooming up. I'm zooming up in the middle of this banknote, and I'm seeing these emblems here. Lion that is on the British, one of the British flags. And then this is the Dragon of Wales. This would be the Rampant Lion of Scotland. And this would be the Harp of Ireland, which shows that he's sovereign over all of these. So we know in the book of Revelation, I told you he's the only one who has all four of the emblems. He's got the dragon, the lion, and the Scottish lion there. But he's also got the bear in his name, Arthur. And I showed you that his hallmark is the leopard's head. So you can click on this. Let me see here. I'm trying to hold this and do this at the same time. This changes. Different patterns. So I just wanted to point out that the banknotes of King Charles do have the royal cipher, the mark of the king. And I do believe this is going to be important for the future when people have to take the mark of the king, or they won't be able to buy and sell. So even though I talked about how he has all those emblems quite some time ago, you know, this is even further developing, showing you that, you know, to have the money that has the king's royal cipher on it, his mark, the mark of the king, and his emblems, all of which are in the book of Revelation. So I totally believe that when the Sanhedrin group chooses him as their anointed king, and they decide to come under the Commonwealth, that at some point they will require the king's mark upon themselves. And I don't know how all that's going to work, but I'm just, you know, showing you and revealing things that the Lord has shown me about it. So you can really see how this could easily fall into place with no problem whatsoever. And the king would be the one that could broker the peace between the two sides over there if they both came under the Commonwealth. But you can see how the monetary system is setting up for the king's image to be taken, and people will have to basically pledge allegiance to this king when they put a king in place with the Sanhedrin, and the whole world will marvel when Israel has a king again. But it's a replacement king, not King Jesus. So this is why Jesus is going to come a second time. And the wrath is going to be poured out on all those who refuse the true king. So anyway, you can see how the monetary system is setting up with the king's royal cipher already. And these new banknotes really give you a glimpse of the lion and the dragon, and of course his name is on it, and Arthur means bear, and the king stamped the leopard head onto the silver of the cross that was carried during his coronation ceremony. It was the first thing that entered the coronation, with a person carrying this silver cross made out of silver from Wales. And the Pope gave King Charles 2 supposed thorns from Jesus' true cross. And the 2 thorns were in the center of the cross, but the king stamped his leopard head hallmark on the silver, which means it was hammered, it was embossed in there with a hammer, and King Charles did this, which I showed you before I'll try to give you a picture here again to show you when he did that. And I did a whole video on this, but this was King Charles stamping the leopard's head mark of the king into the cross that had these two pieces of Christ's true cross in it. So the king put his mark on the true king's cross. Isn't that something? And here you had the Pope giving the king these two fragments of Jesus' true cross, and here's the king hammering his leopard head hallmark in it, the mark of the king. So you're going to have this king in place of Jesus as king first. He's going to be set upon the throne of Israel. I definitely believe this is going to happen. So here are some of King Charles III's royal ciphers. You can see that the royal cipher can include the king's image or not. It can have just the crown, his title, his name, his number, or it can include his image. One thing I find interesting about this is that the king, when he hammered in the leopard's head, some of the titles in articles said the coronation of King Charles III, striking the first commemorative hallmark. The leopard's head was the king's hallmark. I'll go back to some of my former work that I did, but this is from the SA office in co.uk, and they said back in January of 2023, a commemorative hallmark was approved to celebrate the coronation of King Charles III. This special mark is now available at the Sheffield SA office, and we are delighted to see many of our registered customers jumping at the chance to utilize the time-limited mark. Here is one of the first articles to be marked from William Yates, a sterling silver cufflink bearing the commemorative hallmark in the center. The commemorative mark is based on a medal by Ian Rank Broadley, FRBS, and using artwork supplied by Thomas Fetterini. The mark depicts the king's head against an oval background. It can be applied to gold, silver, platinum, or palladium items and any of the 4 UK SA offices. If you're interested in having this mark applied, punches are available in sizes 1mm to 8mm, and the minimum size will be 1mm for punches and 0.75mm for laser. You know, could the king's mark be put on by a laser? This kind of appears that it can be. The king's coronation mark can be placed anywhere viable on the item being hallmarked, not necessarily next to the statutory hallmark, and can differ in size from the compulsory component marks. It can be made as large as is practically possible on the item being submitted. The king's coronation mark can be used with or without the current date letter mark, and the cost of applying the mark in a standard size, and it gives the size there. In addition to the standard hallmarking changes, laser and feature commemorative marks may be subject to additional charges. So, you know, they use cool lasers on the skin. So I can see how very easily, you know, people might want to take the mark of the king, you know, or be forced to in the future, at some future date. But a spokesperson for the SA offices of the UK said the UK SA offices have a long tradition of capturing special events with the creation of commemorative hallmarks. The special mark provides an additional narrative for products carrying the mark. Equally importantly, it brings the importance of the hallmark into focus with the jewelry buying consumer. Jewelers, silversmiths, and retailers can request the mark from Sheffield Assay Office through 2023 until the end of 2024. People can request to have the mark. Now there's different hallmarks, but you can see in this particular one, you've got the lion here, and then you've got the leopard. Now they used to stamp the leopard mark going back hundreds of years, so you can see some of these. I'll just scroll across. Some of these are really badly done artwork, but this, it kind of went from being a lion to a leopard, and this one looks more like a leopard right here. There's 1866, and I'll come down here. 1893, 1895. So if you have a silver piece and it's stamped with the king's leopard mark, the hallmark, then you may have a valuable piece of silver. So this was the leopard head mark that King Charles struck into the cross. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. Isn't that an interesting connection? If he is the king that they set upon the throne of Judah within Israel until Jesus comes and he's the last king. Okay, so the leopard's head, in the reign of Edward I, it was decided that the fineness of silver for both coin and wrought plate should be standardized, and thus the statute of 1300 titled "Vessels of Gold shall be assayed, touched, and marked. The king's prerogative shall be saved" was enacted, making sterling 11-ounce 2 DWT in the Troy pound that standard for all English silver. And this statute was originally written in Old Norman French, in which the language the following directive is given, which is in a foreign language. And then it says it translates as head. And this passage therefore translates as, "And that no manner of vessel of silver depart out of the hands of the workers until it be assayed by the guardians, the wardens of the craft, and further, that it be marked with the leopard's head." Pretty stunning. London continued to use the leopard's head on both gold and silver of sterling standard into the 20th century, and by then it was the only office so doing. It was not until 1975, however, that they first struck this mark on silver Britannia standard, so that technically it is from that year that the leopard's head can be truly said to be the London mark, although of course it can be treated as if it were the London mark for the period between 1300 and 1697, and again between 1883 and 1975. So you can see this leopard's head is the SA mark of London, of King Charles III. And then this mark right here is the sterling mark. It's got the lion on it. The leopard and the lion. And of course we saw on the banknote the dragon. And the king's name has bear as its meaning. Now, the vast majority of English, Scottish, and Irish silver produced in the last 500 years is stamped with either 4 or 5 symbols known as hallmarks or marks. The prime purpose of these marks is to show that the metal of the item upon which they are stamped is of a certain level of purity. The metal is tested and marked at special offices regulated by the government known as assay offices. Only metal of the required standard will be marked, and it is a form of consumer protection whose origin goes back almost 1,000 years. So there are so very many different hallmarks found on British silver that to know all of them would be impossible. Fortunately, with the use of single reference book, it is possible for even a complete novice to decipher the vast majority. Although there are many books on the market which can be used to help read hallmarks, the standard book of reference used by dealers and collectors worldwide is Bradbury's Book of Hallmarks. And this packet-sized reference contains all of the marks that one is likely to encounter on a regular basis. And armed with this book, the process of reading these marks can be split into the 5 simple steps. Look for the standard mark. There are 5 standard marks found on British silver. The walking lion for all sterling silver made in England. The standing lion for all sterling silver made in Glasgow, Scotland. The thistle for all sterling silver made in Edinburgh, Scotland. And the crowned harp for all sterling silver made in Dublin, Ireland. The image of Britannia for Britannia standard silver. You don't need to memorize these marks because they are in Bradbury's Book of Hallmarks. Simply flick through the book looking at the top of the tables of marks to remind yourself if you forget. Look for the town mark. There are many different town marks, but the most common ones are listed below. The leopard's head, crowned for silver, hallmarked in London pre-1820. The leopard's head for silver, hallmarked in London post-1820. The anchor for silver, hallmarked in Birmingham. The crown for silver, hallmarked in Sheffield. The 3 wheat sheaves for silver, hallmarked in Chester. The castle for silver, hallmarked in Edinburgh. The tree, fish, bell, and bird for silver, hallmarked in Glasgow. The crowned harp for silver, hallmarked in Dublin. Try to say that real fast. Note that Dublin is unique in using the same mark for the town mark and the standard mark. The mark is only struck once. However, the crowned harp is often seen with another mark called the Hibernia, which is similar to the Britannia silver mark of a seated lady, which is on the banknote of King Charles III. We saw that earlier. The mark is sometimes mistaken for the standard mark, but it was in fact a special duty mark, which is a woman's head, used only in Dublin. Okay, so look at the duty mark. The duty mark was only struck in certain years, and when found, it will take form of either a king or queen's head. So there's the image of the king. Depending on who was on the throne at the time, it tells you if duty has been paid. The duty mark was only struck in certain years, and when found, it will take this form of either a king or a queen's head. So it's their image. Depending on who was on the throne at the time, it tells you if duty has been paid. To the collector, the main importance of this mark is that it helps you find the date letter. The king's head duty mark was first struck in 1784. In that year and following year, the head faced left and was debossed, indented, rather than embossed, raised up in relief. This mark has become known as the incused duty mark. From 1786 to Victoria's reign, the king's head duty mark always faces right and is embossed like all other hallmarks. When Victoria came to the throne in 1837, the mark was replaced with the queen's head duty mark, which always faces left. The use of a duty mark was dropped in 1890. Then you should look for the date letter. Go to the appropriate section in Bradbury's for the given town and look for a matching date letter with or without the duty mark as needed. Whilst looking for the date letter, you need to bear in mind that the font, its capitalization, and shape of the background, known as the shield, are varied in each cycle of letters. So although 20 letters are used, it's possible to know exactly which letter that particular combination of font and shield is referring to. And it's important to note that each town has a different series of letters starting on a different year. And that means that not only is the font and shield different depending on the town, but also the letter. And for example, the date letter for 1898 in London is a lowercase c. In Sheffield, it is lowercase f, and in Birmingham, it's lowercase y. The shield and font is different in each case, and this is why it's important to find the town mark before you try to find the date letter. And I talked about this in another video, the maker's mark, and that's why we are sealed, when we come under God's covenant, Yeshua's covenant in his blood, we receive the Holy Spirit, which is the maker's mark. So he puts his seal on us. The maker's mark was initially a picture, but this practice was superseded by using the first two letters of the maker's surname and later the initials. So the maker's mark can probably be the royal cipher. So there are simply too many maker's marks for a pocket guide to include, and so to find the maker, one needs to refer to a variety of large reference books. And most people would need to rely on the dealer or auction room from which the item was bought to identify the maker. And that's it. In those simple steps, you can quite easily decipher the hallmarks on any piece of British silver made in the last 500 years. And this was by Jonathan and Daniel Franks of L. Franks Antique Silver. So this shows with even the stamping of the leopard head, you also have the hallmark of the lion, and you have a hallmark of the dragon with King Charles III and a hallmark of the leopard's head. So let me show you this. You can see on the left the leopard's head from 1820, the leopard's head from 1821, the lion, passant, in sterling silver, and the maker's mark, which is initials. And here are some of the individual cities and towns' maker's marks. So you can see, the different, you can see the Scottish lion here, that's on the Scottish flag from Edinburgh, and England's lion, and the harp of Ireland, and the thistle of Scotland. And here we have a couple of London's leopards' heads. And Edinburgh Castle, the seat of the Scottish crown, there the royal jewels are there in Edinburgh Castle. And these are from Ireland here. The mark of origin, or the town mark, identifies the assay's office where the silver item was verified. London origin is identified by the use of the leopard's head, crowned and uncrowned from 1821. In reality, the leopard's head was a standard mark and its use applied to all goldsmiths throughout the land. And it was not until 1856 that the leopard's head mark could have been used for any purpose other than a fineness mark. And that reminds me of something. This is a stamp of purity of the silver. So if the Sanhedrin believes that the red heifer ceremony is the blood and the ashes of the heifer, the blood is sprinkled towards the temple. The ashes of the red heifer are sprinkled on the people to purify them. I'm thinking that maybe they will take the king's mark to signify their purity, and they won't be able to buy and sell unless they have the king's mark of showing that they've been purified by the ashes of the red heifer. Now, this completely makes sense to me. Since the 14th century, the standard for silver in England was set at 11 ounces and 2 pennyweights in the troy pound, 925 parts in 1,000. And it was related to money, and as far as wrought plate was concerned, it had to be as good as money. The statute 28 EWD Cap XX, which introduced this standard, reads as follows: "It is ordained that no goldsmith of England, nor none otherwise within the king's dominions, shall from henceforth work were silver than money. The 925 to 1,000 sterling silver fineness is certified in London and other British assay offices by the use of the lion passant mark. For a short period, 1696 to 1720, the standard was elevated to 958.4 to 1,000, and the Britannia mark replaced the lion passant. And different standard marks are used in Scotland's thistle in Edinburgh and lion rampant in Glasgow, and later Edinburgh, and in Ireland, crowned harp in Dublin. So now, you know, there's so many of these hallmarks. There's no doubt that there's a bear somewhere. But it's interesting that there's this article that says King Charles still travels with his beloved childhood teddy bear and carries around a custom-made toilet seat. That's what a royal author claimed. So it's funny, this article says King Charles had a sentimental attachment to his childhood teddy bear. So do I. I have my teddy bear here. That still accompanies him everywhere today, a royal biographer has claimed. Christopher Anderson, author of The King, The Life of Charles III, told Entertainment Tonight the new monarch, at the time 73, adored his bear so much that he only ever allowed one person to carry out essential repairs on it, his childhood nanny, Mabel Anderson. The author added that as a young prince and into adulthood, Charles treated the teddy bear like his own child. So there's another way which King Charles III has the bear, the lion, the leopard, and the dragon. And there's a couple of pictures of him holding teddy bears people gave him. And of course, Queen Elizabeth had the Paddington bear. And if the antique teddy ever needed some running repairs, only Mabel Anderson, the King's childhood nanny, was allowed anywhere near it. Miss P, as she was affectionately called by the King, was even hauled out of retirement to help. He was well into his 40s, and every time that teddy needed to be repaired, you would think it was his own child having major surgery. He added the bear went everywhere with Charles. Miss Anderson, who is now in her 90s, joined the royal household when Charles was in need of an assistant nurse and became one of the firm's most trusted servants, as well as a good friend of the late Queen. That's kind of funny. So you're not going to believe this, but the toy shops had commissioned the King Charles III coronation commemorative teddy bear. So the teddy bear was $498. Let me show it to you. So the king has a bear. So they have British Bears plush teddy. And ironically, I have my teddy bear from my childhood, from when I was about, I don't know, 5 years old or something. And his name, ironically, is Teddy. And it's interesting that they also have the King Charles III birthday edition bear, Highgrove's collectible bear, limited to only 500. It was a commemorative teddy bear, handmade. And they had the King Charles III coronation Hallmark. His Majesty King Charles III's coronation commemorative is the king's head against an oval background. This was a Hallmark with the king's head featuring his face. So you can see the image of the king's head, the mark hallmarked into the silver as a commemorative. So after showing you all of this, the mark of the king includes the royal cipher, includes the king's image, his name, his number, his title, and it could take any of these forms. And this hallmark can be put on something, an object, even probably a person in the future, through some sort of cold laser on the forehead or the hand, to show that you're the finest purified person. And to me, that says that these people that think that they're going to be purified with the red heifer are going to take this mark of the king. And those who don't pledge allegiance to that king, because they pledge allegiance to King Jesus, they will not take the king's mark, and they won't be considered pure because they won't have this purification that they claim is through ashes. After showing you all the hallmarks and everything, I want you to hear Revelation 13:2 again. And the beast, and we can put the word king in there, because a beast is a king according to the prophet Daniel. And the king which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat, that's his throne, and great authority. King Charles III has all of those: leopard, bear, lion, and dragon. And he's got a throne and great authority. And when he's chosen by Israel as the king that can broker peace between the two sides, Israel and Palestinians, when the people come under the authority of the king, they may take his mark as a sign of their purity with the red heifer ceremony at some point. I don't know how all of this is going to play out, but I'm just noticing the connection between this pure silver being stamped with the hallmark of the king and the purity that's supposed to come during the red heifer ceremony to all the Jewish people of the world, because they've rejected the blood of the true heir, King Jesus. So we have the Maker's mark on us. We are sealed for eternal life because we've been hallmarked by the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So you can see how all of this is coming together. So I'm just trying to present this as the Lord brings these things forth, as far as the four emblems come together in the book of Revelation. What's interesting is that there's going to be a vial poured out on the earth, and a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the king, and upon them which worshipped his image. So at some point, something's going to happen that's beyond what we can see right now. But I'm just putting some pieces together so you can see how it's developing. Then to sum this up, in Revelation 13, verse 16, it says, "He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark of the name of the king or the number of his name." Does that strike you as stunning? "Here is the wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the king, for it's a number of a man, and his number is 666. And 666 is carbon, which they're trying to use for climate change. Charles tries to get his carbon footprint down to net zero, and he's rewarding people with the Terra Carta stamp who comply with the climate change. So all of that's going to come into play. There may be a Hallmark stamp with that number on it at some point. He's Charles III, so that has a Hebrew equivalent. And these are just incredible, not coincidences, but a once-in-a-lifetime thing of these emblems coming together like nothing we've ever seen. So I'm going to leave you for now. I hope this enlightened you, and please give a like to help the algorithms, and support my channel if you can. And I'll see you in the next video. I hope this opened up your mind to see the truth of what's coming down the pike. Maybe the illness is a delay. Maybe it wasn't fully time yet, so I don't know. But nobody in the history of the world has had all 4 of these emblems all at once. And with that, I'll just say have a great afternoon. See you later in the next video. Thanks for watching. Shalom for now.